Ladies and gentlemen, marketers, founders and creative rebels, lend me your ears as I welcome you to the very first Creative Con. I'm your host with the most, Paul Allen, and for the next few hours I'd like to guide you through all things ad creative, because let's be real, media buying is becoming more automated, targeting increasingly limited, but creative is our one and arguably best lever that we have complete control over. So whether you're a brand, an agency or solo marketer trying to break through the noise, we are here to help you do more of your ads, do more of your content and do more of your ideas. So let us give unto creatives that which belongs to creatives. The power to dominate the social feeds, to capture the attention of millions and scale your brand or business to new heights. Now, before we start laying on the advanced tactics and mind-blowing case studies, we want to set the foundation just right and say a few quick but very important thank yous. One, I'd like to give a massive shout out to yourself for not only signing up for this event but for showing up. It's my promise to you that over the next few hours we will deliver as much value as humanly possible. Two, I have to give a massive shout out to our sponsors for this event, Marpipe, Proxima and Replo, as without their support, running an event of this size and scale, it just simply wouldn't be possible. So please drop some love in the chat, some fire, a little bit of applause, confetti, whatever you've got. Now, Creative Con. Let's kick this thing off with some serious fire. Our first speaker is a creative strategist whose brain has become the secret weapon of some of the biggest brands in the game. And today, she's here to show you how to scale your creative ideation without frying your brain in the process. So if you ever stared at a blank page, burned out by the endless ad variation that you need to come up with, well, this is a session that's hopefully going to change everything for you. So buckle up and please join me in giving a massive welcome to the one and only Sarah Levinger.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Sarah Levinger. I'm the founder and owner of Tether Insights. We do marketing automations and market research for D2C companies. And we're going to talk about something that's very, very important today because I think it's something that a lot of creatives struggle with, which is how to scale ideas without burning out your brain. I'm going to teach you guys the 40-minute weekly creative strategy sprint that I go through for the brands that we actually do creative strategy for. Because I truly believe that if you can make a 100% repeatable, duplicatable system around creativity, you guys can go much, much farther without having to spend so much time on just creating massive amounts of ads. So I'm going to show you exactly how I built mine. But first, I just want to start with kind of a weird fun fact. Did you guys know that Stephen King writes 2,000 words every single day? I did not know this stat until I started looking up for this particular presentation. He uses the same exact desk, same exact hours, no rituals around this, no playlist. Like, he doesn't really wait for inspiration to strike. He literally has a system for creativity. He just sits down and works until the creative juices start flowing and ideas start to get like more focused. Same with Jerry Seinfeld, arguably one of the best comedians of our time, I think, built kind of a system to make creativity automatic. So every day he writes one joke at least, and then he marks this big X on his calendar. And his only rule isn't like create really, really good jokes or like try and make as many jokes as possible. His only rule is just don't break the calendar chain, which I find super interesting. Leonardo da Vinci, I also kind of was doing some digging into his like systems of what he used. He has 7,000 pages of like notebooks, experiments, and observations that he had during his time period, where he just created a system around his discoveries. He just had a system for how I go through and start to like churn out my experiments so that I can be more creative without having to lose momentum. None of these people relied on like chaos. They all relied on a very specific structure to help fuel their creativity. Now, most of us, I think, are taught kind of the completely opposite of this. We're taught that creativity is supposed to be like just captured, right? We have to like go out and catch it, basically. We're really taught that creatives need a lot of space to be creative, whatever that means, right? I have no idea what that means when you have to be creative. And I think we're taught that true creativity looks and feels a lot like chaos. We've kind of glorified the creative panic cycle a little bit, which drives me a little nuts, because this is usually the cycle that I see. We start with some sort of inspiration. We rush through the process as fast as we can. We dump as many ideas out as we possibly can, regardless of whether or not they're high quality or not. We go into overproduction and just completely overfill our creative stacks with as many ideas as we can generate. And that's how we burn out, right? We wear it kind of like a badge of honor, but this is not creating. This is just surviving a creative process, one that I truly believe is kind of broken. The problem, I think, here is not that we're not creative enough. We have the building blocks for this, right? It's that we're working inside a system that is not designed to create what we want to create. It's just designed to kind of exhaust us as creatives and a creative strategist. So what if creativity isn't really about like chasing inspiration at all? This is kind of the question that I came up with while I was researching for this particular presentation. What if it's more about like building structure that makes inspiration predictable? And this is what I want to do and what I want to teach you in this particular presentation today. So here's what I've learned after like years and years of doing this type of work. Creativity is not chaos. It's pattern recognition. The best creative strategists I have ever met are people who can pattern recognize better than anybody you've ever seen. The best creators are not chasing these ideas at all, right? They're designing their own environment so that they can make ideas chase them. Stephen King obviously like treats writing like a manual kind of a labor where he just sits down. I have set hours. I have to produce something with this particular time period. Jerry Seinfeld's only metric is literally just continuity, right? So just keep the chain going. Leonardo da Vinci just built kind of like an analog database of everything he noticed so that he could track patterns, not so that he could just discover things randomly, so that he set it really, really carefully so that the system would help him discover things at particular time. So all these people, I really do believe, knew that consistency isn't the enemy of inspiration. It's kind of the doorway to it, right? If you have all these different things popping up, what does the combination make? Pattern recognition is super, super key here. Our brains are not generators, right? So we're going to remember this. And if you take nothing else away from this entire presentation, just take this. Our brains are detectors, right? When we remove like clutter from the environment, the pressure or perfectionism that we often go through as creative strategists kind of dissipates. And we start doing what we're wired for, which is connecting the dots between things that were completely unrelated before, but now are related. So pattern recognition, right? The system has to help us recognize patterns. And that's what we're going to learn about today. So I think this is kind of why people with systems, I think, make more original work than those who rely on inspiration, because the structure kind of eliminates the one thing that really kills originality, which is decision fatigue. As soon as your brain gets tired, it's much, much harder to create good, solid concepts that go into the ad account and just crush. So if creativity isn't about is about like freedom, and it's more about like actually paring down and constraining some of the things that cause so much of this overwhelm and burnout, then as creative strategists, we really need to build systems that will help us generate ads that have a higher chance of hitting, just because they're so good that people can't help but stop and watch it. And that comes from active pattern recognition. Okay. All of this kind of wraps into this weekly ritual, which we are going to talk about right now. This is the 40-minute creative sprint. And we're going to talk about this because I think this is like super, super key, that you keep it to a minimum. Your creative strategy should not take longer than 40 minutes a week. I truly believe this. If you're doing more than 40 minutes a week, you're getting lost in the weeds and you're not recognizing patterns. You're literally just looking for like a needle in a haystack, which is a terrible way to kind of build on your creative strategy and do good work in an ad account. So I call this method the 40-minute creative strategy sprint. Each phase is going to transform this kind of like chaotic work into much more structured, like focused, emotional pattern recognizing. That way you have good direction and you know which way to go in the ad account every single week. So the sprint moves through about 4 quick phases. The very first one being tag what you see. Tag what you see. Anytime I work with creative strategists, especially if I'm training, the very first thing I ask is, what tagging system do you have for insights? Do you know why people purchase? That's why we tag things, and it has to start at the insight level. We got to know what this idea actually came from, not just like randomly stick it into an ad account because we thought it was a good idea. So very first step, tag what you see. Second step to this is organize your tags. Once you start tagging things by very specific insights or things you want to track, you got to organize these into clusters and emotional patterns that are found in the tag, so that you know, I can go and pull this off the shelf of my library and I know what's in this book, if that makes sense, and I know how to use it inside the ad account. Third to this, after you tag, after you organize, is to build it. So you need to build avatars from combinations of tags. combinations of tags. And if all of this is like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what Sarah's talking about, I'm going to explain it all in just a second. So for the most part, though, building is probably one of the most important parts, and it's also where your production lives. It's also one of the areas I see that people jump to first. Before they tag or organize, they jump straight to building. I want you guys to slow down a little bit and take your time to tag and to organize, so that way by the time you get to the build phase, it's just the fun part. You just get to execute and create cool ads. So the last piece of this, obviously, is to test your hypothesis. Every single creative strategy sprint we do, we must have a hypothesis for what we're trying to learn. Not just, we're just trying to get conversions. Not just like we want to drop CPA. Not just like we're trying to get people to buy. That's so vague that your brain's not going to understand what it needs to pull off of its tags, its tag library, so that you can start to build things on the back end that'll actually work. So make sure that when you test, you have a hypothesis. So let's start with the tagging. We start by pulling raw insights from basically anywhere you can get it. I love Reddit because Reddit has these big, long, beautiful stories of all these different things that people talk about and think about and wonder and are frustrated with, and like lots of debates, lots of arguments in there on which way is the best way to do basically anything. Excuse me. So I go to Reddit a ton. Post-purchase surveys, though, add comments, emails, quizzes, like anywhere that you can get customer insights, pull it. You need to pull all of these insights into one spot. I don't want you guys to hold them. Some of them are chat. Some of them are in a Google Doc. Some are with like your creative strategist. Some are just in my head. Like it's got to be written down, and you got to put it somewhere that we can actually track every single insight that we are starting to test. That way we can go back once we start running ads and take a look at where did that idea come from, and was it a good idea to begin with? We're looking specifically for volume of insights here, not necessarily volume of creative. I truly believe you don't need thousands of ads to win, right? So we're front loading the work because it's faster and cheaper in the long run. So very first thing, pull your insights, and we're going to tag them for basically 4 different principles here. You're not going to look for what people say. You're going to look for what people feel. So very first thing we tag for is something called valence. Valence is really interesting because it has to do with how the emotion inside those insights is being communicated. Valence can be either positive or negative. Positive valence would be things like calm, reassurance, right? Or it can be really, really, really positive things like excitement, elation, joy, pride, right? So when you think of valence and when you start tagging your insights, the very first thing I want you to do is just either read the insight yourself or go throw it into chat and say, chat, what's the valence here, positive or negative, right? That way you can start to track, are people feeling really negative about what they're talking about, or are they feeling positive about it? The next piece of this is to track intensity. So intensity has a wide range, right? You can have very intense emotions like we talked about, which is like confidence, pride, whatever it is. Or you can have emotions that are like not so like intense, which are just like, I'm chill, like I'm laid back, I'm super calm, I'm supportive, whatever it is, right? So you want to track intensity on this because we want to see, are these people speaking about this in a subtle way, almost like they don't want people to know that they are struggling with this? Or is it really charged, like they're ready to fight everybody on this particular insight and concept? So we'll tag for valence. Is it positive or negative? We'll tag for intensity. Is it a slow little burn, or is it like a raging fire kind of a thing? Next on here, we want to tag any sort of identity that you see. Identity for Sarah usually means which self are they currently in. There's 3 different selves that humans kind of toggle off and on throughout the day, depending on what they're actually experiencing. This is built on a psychology kind of principle called self-discrepancy theory. When it comes to identity, there are 3 selves that we actually activate while we're shopping as well. First one is ideal self, right? So aspirational. We all know this in marketing, where it's like become the best version of you. The second one is actual self, which is like the self you're in all the time, present tense. So this messaging is more like you're good the way you are. You don't have to change for the future. But if you're ready to change one day, like we have something for you, right? The last one is ought self. Ought self is more duty driven, right? Responsible. So ought self responds really well to messages of like guilt, those type of things. So you want to track identities in here because you want to see, how are people describing their problem? Which one are they in? Are they thinking about the future? Are they thinking about the past and they're really in duty mode? Or are they thinking of right now, the present? We want to tag identity so we know which way to communicate the message. And the last one in here, obviously, we want to track motivation, right? What's the emotions that they're expressing? Is it safety? Are they looking for belonging? Do they really want control, freedom? Like, what is it that they're craving, so that we can start to tag it and track what we're going for every single time we create a new ad? So, once everything's tagged, now it's time to organize. And this is the fun part. We already did all the tagging on the back end, right? So we've tagged our valence, our intensity, our self, and we've also tagged our motivations, our emotions that we're trying to go after. Then you take all these data points and you start mapping them together. So this is really interesting because a lot of times I see marketers stop at this variable issue of like, there's so many things in the ad account I could test. Like, how do I know which ones to test? This is how we fix that, right? This is how emotion kind of becomes multidimensional a little bit, because you're not just seeing who your audience is, you're sort of seeing how they behave emotionally. Because you've tagged it so carefully on every single insight, you know exactly how they want the message communicated, which emotion I need to actually communicate to them, and in a positive or negative way towards which identity, right? So this becomes your emotional map and the foundation of your creative strategy. You've done the work to tag it. Now you can go through and build your campaign 1, campaign 2, campaign 3, campaign 4 on combinations of these different tags instead of just like guessing as to whether you should go one way or the other. So we're going to organize these into clusters. We're going to take everything that we tagged and we're going to organize them into stacks, right? So we're going to do valence number 1, or like zone 1 valence. We're going to do ideal self. Maybe we're going after a particular emotion like belonging. And then we're also going to make it really intense, right? So there's only 4 things you really need to like work with. When you begin to look at this kind of emotional map, I think these clusters are going to be real obvious to you, because people with similar patterns are going to pop up naturally in the ad account. And you're going to start to see, oh man, every time we run valence zone 4, it hits incredibly well. Or every time we run ads towards aught self, they respond. You'll start to see these clusters and these avatars come out, and then emotional composites are going to start to represent why people buy. So you'll start to be able to like pull that out real quick. So if this is all like high level and you're just like, I kind of understand it, like what's going on, let me give you a good example so you can kind of see this broken down. So for instance, these are some of the avatars that we've identified across the board that are basically in every single brand. And this is something we study heavily at Tether. Every brand we work with has at least a couple of these particular avatars inside their ad accounts. The first one is the achiever. Now, again, remember, these are basically made from tagging those 4 different emotional, psychological tags in the insights, and then pulling them into different combinations. So the achiever is an ideal self. Their valence is usually very positive, and their trigger is capability, right? So their core motivator is really just, I want to feel more capable as a person. So if I was going to market to the achiever, I would make all of my ads very positive, uplifting messages that talk about the future because they're into ideal self, that trigger this capability mode, right? That's how I would actually go after this particular combination of avatar. So let's do another one. If you're going after the protector, this is also another one that we see often come out for every brand that we've ever done any research for. The protector responds a little bit to guilt because they're a little bit of ought self. They're very dutiful people. And responsibility is very important to them. They're a little bit negative on the messaging, though. They respond really well to messages of like, you should be doing better. You got to do this for your family. You got to do this for them. Those type of emotions, especially on the trigger side, those are the ones that they respond to the best. And again, hopefully you guys are kind of seeing how this breaks down. All we're doing is taking 4 different tags and rearranging them, combining them in different ways so that we can start to test into some of these emotional avatars that are really just inside the psychology of what people are actually saying once the insight comes in. Last one on here is the rebel, who kind of responds to some really interesting things. They respond really well to ideal messages, so future focused. Their valence is the opposite of the achiever. They're kind of a little bit negative because they don't want to be controlled, right? So messages that speak to their fear of being controlled, or non-conformity kind of messages, really work really well for them. So, and I love the rebel. They're so interesting once you start to message toward them. So overall, when you start to tag these 4 things, you're going to see really interesting data and customer patterns really start to shine, right? So those clusters kind of become your more emotional avatars because they're not static. And they're not demographic based. They're not functional profiles at all. They're built on kind of the underlying psychology that exists in all humans. So you can apply it to anything, and they're going to exist across the brand no matter what industry you guys are marketing in. So in this case, we're just identifying what already exists in here and what helps people move forward quicker in the buying process instead of trying to just guess at what we think is going to make people buy. So let's move on to the last piece of this here. Obviously, we got to test this, right? So Now you're going to take your emotional avatars that you built from combinations of those 4 different tags, and you're going to line them with your brand goals. So you're going to ask, what does this avatar, this specific combination, need to hear to be able to purchase from us, right? So how can our message meet their motivations? Which emotional tone should we use? Should it be calm? Should it be charged? Positive, negative? Which one fits best? And that way, when you start to generate ads, you'll see this very quickly here. This ad, flawless skin, 0 excuses, results in just 3 minutes a day, that's going to hit somebody who's achievement focused real quick, right? This one habit once a day, skincare that's on a schedule, that's going to hit a totally different audience, an audience that might be a little bit more like, I need consistency and someone to help me just create good habits. And then the last one on here, I think it's really important when you start to test any sort of hypothesis, you really need to have something in mind, right? Keep it in mind that when you go through this process and you start to tag all these things and you start to create ads by specific avatars, we need to figure out what's going to lift the needle for the business in the ad account, because we've now just systematized our creative strategy and our execution needs to go after what are we trying to do. So for instance, when I go through and I actually test, I will take the emotional avatar and I'll write down as many different ways as possible that I could possibly trigger that need for them. And then we'll create a hypothesis, such as if we trigger achievement, right, for this specific avatar through first principles kind of messaging, or if we try for discounts, or if we're going after any sort of urgency scarcity, our click-through rate needs to go up by this amount to be able to say, yes, this triggered that specific person. I will choose a goal, some sort of a benchmark to go after for all the ads and the campaigns that I'm actually working on, because this is the part that you're already good at, obviously, right? So we're developing good messaging at this point. You guys don't need to learn about production. You guys are super, super good at it. And obviously, oh my God, Creative OS is like one of the best ways to solve this, especially for like statics, landing pages, emails, because they already have the designs ready for you. Your job is to create good messaging and solidify your goals so you can test very carefully. So that's all I'm going to say about this part. Have a hypothesis, basically, is what this summarizes into. Have a hypothesis, create good messages, create good ads. The last step here is translating all of these pieces into like testable creative paths. So at Tether, we run basically every emotion through one of 4 different testing like maps, I would say. We call this the TEAP model. This was built off of a Google study that they did around consumer journeys in digital formats. And each stage kind of represents a distinct emotional job. So trigger ads obviously need to grab attention. Exploration ads need to kind of like deepen the connection and help people go through the process of just exploring their options. Evaluation ads really need to help us evaluate which one of these options is best for me. This is where a lot of identity work comes in. And then purchase ads are going to help us understand, okay, how do we get them to actually purchase now that they've seen kind of the range and roster of what we have. You're not going to be testing random hooks. You're not going to be like testing just, random like, oh my God, it just left me. Random scripts. I almost said briefs. You're not going to be testing random scripts or random creators. We're going to know. We need this kind of creator. We need somebody who can communicate in this particular way. We need someone who can actually go after the evaluation process and help our customers see themselves evaluating. And we're going to go after it in this specific tone. Hopefully you guys can see that it breaks down very simply when you start to tag the actual underlying psychology. And this is just excuse me, one way to make it easier. So here's how this works in practice. Let's say that's like your emotional avatar is the protector, maybe someone that is motivated by safety and stability. At each stage of TEAP, we're going to translate that same emotion a little bit differently, right? So at the beginning, maybe it's just trigger ad. We just need to get people to pay attention and see themselves in what we're selling. Maybe at the like exploration phase, we're starting to talk about like what benefits come from just working with our product and our brand. At the evaluation stage, we're going to use a lot of the same things that we already use. A lot of really good quotes, a lot of social proof. We're going to show them a lot of other people are already taking this and enjoying it. And then obviously on the purchase side, now we just need a good offer that's tailored specifically to what they crave, what they look for in particular offers. And that's based upon, obviously, like I said, all the tags. It's based on all the underlying psychology. Once you know the emotions and the actual like valence intensity self that people are actually in when they purchase, it's very easy to just say, oh, we just need to create about 5 to 10 different ads and just run it until customer behavior changes a little bit. So to wrap up here, this is where systems are going to meet storytelling, right? So This is one sprint. It's basically 40 minutes. You're going to go ahead and set a timer for about 10 to 20. You're going to go ahead and pull different insights in and start tagging them one at a time. I have prompts for these if you guys really want to see kind of the back end of this. But there's 12 avatars that are going to come out of those four different tags. And then you have basically 4 testing plans, right? You have a trigger ad, an expiration ad, evaluation ad, and a purchase ad. So combining these together basically makes zero chaos whatsoever. We know exactly what we need to go after. We know exactly how we want to say it, and we know exactly who it needs to go to. The next piece of it is the fun part, which is just executing on really good, beautifully designed, like wonderful ads. So this is going to help because you're not going to guess anymore. And the best part is like you don't have to have chaotic inspiration to start this kind of a process. You just need to follow the system. So I think to wrap up here, you really don't need to burn out to create good breakthrough ideas that are going to drive these brands forward and actually make a dent in the ad account and for the business overall. To be a great creative strategist, you just need a better system, right? You need a better system and the courage to trust it. And I want to end on this really awesome quote that I found from Jerry Seinfeld, which is, this is like one of the biggest creative pursuits. You have to have your idea of what you want to do, but then you got to figure out, what does this thing want to be, right? Your idea comes from insight. Insight has to be tagged as to why people even care about that. The tags need to be combined into emotional avatars, and then the avatars need to be put into all of your ads. You gotta let all these really creative ideas just lead you a little, right? And if you have a system, it's much easier to follow the path. So hopefully you guys learned something today. Thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun. Please come find me if you have any questions, but otherwise, I can't wait to see what you create. Thanks. Appreciate it.